Today I got a 2002 Honda CR-V in the shop. It belongs to my realtor Phil. He wants me to do a trailer hitch install on it. He's got a new bike rack system and this hitch is not gonna do. It's also got some misfire codes across the board, so maybe afterwards we'll do a smoke test. This is the new trailer hitch system that he ordered up by Curt. Let's get the car pulled in the shop, get this thing unboxed and get started. Now, I know what you're thinking. Alec, this isn't a BMW. I know, I usually work on BMWs, but Phil said he needed some help. We gotta help him out. So here's the old tow bar system. Looks like they just ran a through bolt through that factory tow hook location and 2 points of hardware down here on the back. So let's get this new one unboxed. Hopefully it'll be a relatively simple design to install. Hopefully you guys can see that. So it is a much different system. We might have to drop the exhaust to get this thing on. So here's our supplied hardware. We got carriage bolts with some of these brackets. That'll be used for the carriage bolts. The instructions, it's talking about popping the exhaust hangers off for 2002 to 2006 CR-V. Lower the exhaust. Then you use the fish wire, bring the 7/16 carriage bolts through the frame holes. U-bolt goes here, so all right, I'm gonna back the car in a little bit more. We'll drop the exhaust. All right, I think we're good. Next step, we need to remove this hanger so we can get this muffler to drop. And we'll probably have to remove that hanger too, or I'll bust those bolts loose and take the whole rear muffler off. A little bit of lube. So now I'm supposed to take this fish wire, pass it up, put this spacer like this and kink it to keep them separate, and then thread this bolt on to the coil on the end of the fish wire, which I gotta say, this is pretty crafty. Okay, there's one in place. And then the second one, I believe, is just gonna be blocked off with the plate. Thread the bolt in. This goes up. Now we go to this other side, this hanger. Now we got the exhaust properly down. Bolt comes back down. This thing's pretty heavy. Ugh. Okay, these get torqued to 70 foot-pounds. Come on. Then this guy, don't tell me I needed to install him first. Please. Are these both gonna fit? That has to be like the tightest tolerance I've ever seen. Ever seen a tighter fit between two bolts than that right there? They're basically rubbing the color off of each other as I tighten them up. Interesting design, but it works. And she's all torqued up. Ready to go. Time to put the exhaust back up. There's the third hanger. There she is, fully installed. Not a bad looking setup. Relatively easy to get in. Took me about an hour. All right, let's grab the scan tool. So I've done a couple repairs on this thing. I replaced a knock sensor due to a check engine light. Car also died on Phil while he was on a road trip up north, and that turned out to be the VTEC actuator, which is back there in the back left corner. He sent me a screenshot of some codes that he pulled, and it showed like misfires 1 through 3 or 1 through 4. So let's plug in the Foxwell, see if we got anything. Just gonna do a quick auto scan on the OBD2. So we have misfires on 2, 3, and 4, as well as a fluid pressure sensor switch fault. Now, I don't really know where to start with cylinders 2, 3, and 4 misfire on this engine. 1, I never work on these engines, and 2, I don't have any other information besides the misfire. So I'm thinking let's just smoke it, see if we have any obvious vacuum leaks that could be causing that misfire on cold start. Now this hose right here looks sketchy. This is going to be like a crankcase recirculation. So this hose right here is super sketchy. Someone tried to repair this, so smoking it might actually be a challenge because the valve cover is going to vent out this way. I don't want to disconnect it here and plug it because I'm scared of this breaking. This hose right here could technically be considered a vacuum leak. And that's such a ghetto fix. I mean, check that out. There is a lot of oil in that intake boot. A lot. I'm gonna literally need to wipe this out. So much oil. Time to bust out the Ventus. And this should have enough caps and plugs to where we can get this sealed up. Let's install our adapter. I'm going to sneak it past this sensor right here. Grab our smoke output hose. Plug this bad boy in. Adapt it into, plug our smoke hose into our adapter. And then I have an open leak right here, so I'll try fitting this Ventus cap in. Plug that off. Looks like we already have a vacuum leak. Looks like we already have a vacuum leak down here on the intake boot. I'll try to get a better look at it. Could be that the boot is torn or that hose clamp isn't seated all the way. But we have a decent amount of smoke pushing out. A little bit over here too. As you can see right there, I pull on this intake boot and that boot is split. It's leaking vacuum out of that lower intake boot. So this boot runs from the airbox down into the throttle body, and before the throttle body we have a vacuum leak at that intake boot. We also have another vacuum leak over here, and there's a hose right there that's incorrectly sized, and it's leaking out of that connection right there on that vacuum hose to that nipple. But this vacuum leak right here will not pass. We can't rule out misfires due to vacuum leaks until we get this intake boot replaced, because that's a hemorrhaging vacuum leak right before the throttle body. Well, just called the auto parts store, about 40 bucks for a new intake boot. Today's Wednesday, they'll have it by Friday. So relatively cheap fix to get this vacuum leak taken care of. Second one is I'm going to try to maneuver a hose clamp down onto that little nipple down there. It's going to be tough to get it to bite, but going to use a nice German-made clamp and try to snug it down with my ratchet driver with a 6mm socket on the end. Okay, so I got the intake boot ordered up. I was just telling Phil on the phone, this broken nipple off of the airbox is going to be an issue too. Someone did a hack job of trying to silicone it back on, and technically this is for the crankcase recirculation, so positive pressure is going to come out of the valve cover, get reinserted back into the airbox, into the intake stream, and if this is broken and leaking like it was, because it's completely broken in half, that's another vacuum leak there. So we're going to replace the intake boot. I'm going to get this hose refitted and do some looking on eBay for an airbox cover later on today. Now I got to see if I can weasel this hose back down onto this nipple and get it tightened down. There we go. Got a hose clamp onto that vacuum line down there. It is secured up nice and tight now. So one less vacuum leak for the Honda. Now we just need intake boot and airbox. Let's give it another run of smoke, see what happens. So again, you can see that smoke dumping out of the intake boot there, and you just gotta love a smoke machine. Now I was just telling Phil a couple minutes ago on a phone call that with a misfire on cylinder 2, 3, and 4, chances are it's probably not spark plugs or ignition coils. If it was misfiring under load, then maybe I'd look towards ignition coils, or if it was just one cylinder, then I'd pull and swap plugs and coils to see where the fault follows. But because we kind of have misfires across the board, sounds like it would be something that would be feeding into all 4 cylinders, you know, either a fuel issue or an air issue. And in this case with a vacuum leak, it's going to be an air and a fuel issue. If you don't have adequate airflow going into all 4 cylinders that's being properly metered by the mass airflow sensor, you're going to have an incorrect air-fuel mixture ratio. The computer does not know the accurate amount of air going into the engine if you have unmetered air escaping into the intake stream from a cracked intake boot. The same thought can be applied for this vacuum hose that was leaking over here and for this torn airbox boot for the crankcase recirculation. So we still have a hemorrhaging leak there. We're going to call it a day. I'm going to do some research on an airbox cover and we're going to wait for parts. Okay, I got all that silicone removed. They had slabbered on this giant chunk of silicone and epoxy, whatever it is. I got the nipple cleaned up. I got it sprayed off with brake cleaner. I can see the position at where it broke. So these airboxes are not as easy to find on eBay as I thought. So I got it all cleaned up. I'm going to try to super glue it back on and then reinforce it all with epoxy. All right, just a generic bottle of Permatex super glue. I wish I had a hardener so I could accelerate the drying process. Okay, it's cured up a good amount. It's actually feeling pretty strong. Put another layer on, another coat. I got some JB Weld, 1 minute Insta Weld. Gonna whip this up, make ourselves a little JB cocktail. And it's gonna get messy, but that's okay, as long as it doesn't leak. So it looks like we have a sensor connection right here, and then just a Phillips to get this lower hose clamp off. Boot has this wire clip molded into it. All right, we are free. Now check out this intake hose. Let me get my adapter pulled out of here. Check out that tear. Huge tear. Almost split halfway through. Big old vacuum leak. Here's our new boot. Looking really good. Nice, soft, pliable rubber. We have our connection right here. Not sure what this sensor is, but it needs to come out and get swapped. But this new one is blocked off. So I'm actually gonna have to like drill, or what I'm gonna do is just take a hose pick, poke it through, and then I'll let the sensor do the rest. Just poke it through. Put a little dab of Sil Glide on this sensor just so it slides in easy, doesn't fight us. So this hose clamp will go on like that. Pop our sensor back in. Now poking this through with the Phillips did leave me a little flap on the inside, which is kind of just partially covering the sensor, so I'm just going to try to get in there with my flush cut dikes. I think that should be enough. That's nicely seated. Okay, now our hose clamp can go back on. A little bit of wet silicone inside the intake boot just to lube it. This vacuum hose back down on this lower connection. Plug our sensor back in. Snug up this lower clamp. Little notches right here, and there's a little notch on the throttle body. You need to seat that all the way forward so it's properly seated on there. All right, that's nice and tight. Put our wiring harness back into that clip. That's all connected. Good to go. Next step, our air box with our epoxy repair. Reinstall that. Before we do that, slide our hose clamp on. Looking good. I need to get this last piece of vacuum line installed, I think. So it's got a little bit of epoxy left over, or a little bit of silicone from that last hack repair. I'm gonna go cut this off real quick, clean it up. Actually, you know what I just realized? We never smoked it. We gotta smoke this thing, guys. We gotta double check our repair. I almost just got too carried away. And we'll kick our Autoline Ventus back on, start flowing some smoke, and double check our work. Now, if you can see, we do have a little bit more smoke trailing out from the other side of that throttle body. There's a vacuum hose down there I think that may be leaking. I'm gonna take this hood latch assembly out of the way, see if I can get some better access, and see if I can repair that too. So it looks like it's just this hose right here. I'm gonna try to get a hose clamp onto it, because I pulled the hose off and I plugged the orifice off the back of the throttle body and it stopped leaking. So I just need to get a hose clamp on this hose, make it a little more secure. And we're looking good. I was able to sneak that hose clamp on there. We have no more smoke wisping out of that area, which it was just hemorrhaging between that hose and the intake boot. So that's a success. Pop our intake adapter out. Now we can reinstall our hood latch. You want to make sure you line this up with the previous location. So just kind of go off the marks on the body. Now we can put our air box in for real this time. Okay. Snug up our hardware for the air filter box. Okay. We're secured. Intake boots back on, vacuum hoses connected, sensors connected, crankcase ventilation hoses connected, vacuum leak is fixed. We're good to go. Time to clear faults, fire this thing up, see how it runs. Emission fluid pressure sensor fault. We're gonna address that next visit. I got a lot of other projects going on, so we'll just try to adjust the misfires and the trailer hitch install for this visit. So let's get these cleared out so we can get a fresh computer. Erase is done. No faults found. Okay, cool. Let's fire it up, see how she runs. It's idling really good. A little stumbly at first start, but that's probably because we just cleared things. Oh yeah, there we go. Seems to be running really good. Idling really smooth, and so I'm feeling good about the repair. Let's check fluids. Engine oil is low. We are below the minimum mark. Looks like I got a quart left of some 020, so that'll suffice. And we're back to level. Hey, there's no stick in there. Remember, never pull the cover for the radiator until the engine is cooled down. I'm not seeing it up to level right there. Overflow bottle's dry too, so we got to top this thing off. Got some old coolant to make use of. Get this radiator topped up. Top up this expansion tank. This radiator was overfilled a little bit, so I'm going to pull a little bit of coolant out, just so I can get the cap in. Brake fluid reservoir looks good. All right, let's see how she performs. Driving pretty good, no complaints. Freaking 229K on the odometer. This car being front wheel drive has a lot of torque steer. Here's one more under load highway acceleration. Feeling no misfires. I'm not sure when they originally happened to cause the code, but it's feeling strong right now. VTEC just kicked in, bro. That's a wrap. She's driving good, pup. Last thing, just need to set tire pressures. Okay, tire pressures are set. And just for a quick recap, we resealed that vacuum hose down there. We also resealed this vacuum hose. We replaced that intake boot. We also fixed this broken crankcase ventilation to the air filter box, topped off the oil, topped off the coolant, set tire pressures, cleared faults. We're good to go. We'll see what happens with that transmission pressure sensor in the future, and we'll take care of that next visit. I'm gonna go get an invoice crafted up, give Phil a ring, and get this thing shipped out, and then it's back to work on my E30. If you guys are new to the channel, my name is Alec. This is Day Off DIY. I normally specialize in BMW repair. Just like to get these old BMWs fixed up and roadworthy again. So if you're new to the channel, welcome. Be sure to check out some of my other content. I hope you enjoyed, or I hope you learned something new. And as always, folks, I'll see you on my next day off. Cheers.